You never really understand how deep resentment can run until you're left standing in a room full of people who look right through you. That was my life after my mother remarried. At first, it was a fresh start, a promise of stability after years of watching her cry over unpaid bills and empty pots on the stove. But behind the thick smile of my stepfather, Mr. Ojo, lay a bitter truth I would discover much too late, one that would shake the very core of who I thought I was. This isn't a tale of revenge, but of realization. The kind that slowly seeps into your bones until you can't ignore it anymore. And by the time I decided to act, it wasn't out of anger. It was out of justice, for my mother, and for myself. Let me take you back to where it all began. My name is Amara. I was 16 when my mother married Mr. Ojo. A tall, commanding businessman in his early 50s, he owned a successful logistics company in Lagos. Everyone saw him as a savior. My uncles praised my mother for finally finding a real man. Even I believed it for a while. The first few months were bliss. New clothes. 3 meals a day. A proper school. Life had finally softened its grip on us. But slowly, the mask began to slip. Mr. Ojo had 2 sons from a previous marriage, Kelechi and Desmond, both in their 20s. They lived with us, and from day one, they made it clear I didn't belong. At family dinners, Kelechi would mock my accent, my clothes, and the fact that my biological father was a broke mechanic who ran away. Desmond rarely spoke, but when he did, it was only to remind me I was lucky to be eating at this table. I turned to my mother, hoping she would defend me. She would sometimes, but most times she lowered her head. Mr. Ojo controlled everything, the bank account, the car, even her phone. She was surviving, not living. Then came the day that changed everything. It was my 19th birthday. I had just gotten admission into a federal university to study accounting. I came back home buzzing with excitement, holding the admission letter close to my chest. I remember walking into the living room to find Mr. Ojo drinking palm wine with his friends. I knelt down respectfully and told him the news, expecting at least a nod of approval. He laughed. A deep, unsettling laugh. "University," he said, wiping his mouth. "That's good for my sons, not for charity cases." I blinked. "Sir? My money is for my children, Amara. You're not my child. Ask your mother to train you, if she can." The words hung in the air like smoke. One of his friends chuckled nervously. My mother stood frozen at the kitchen door, eyes wide, lips trembling. I turned to her, but she looked away. I didn't cry, not then. I just went to my room, closed the door, and stared at the ceiling for hours. That night, I decided I would never beg for anyone's approval again. But life wasn't done with me. With the help of my best friend Zainab, I found a small job as a receptionist at a law firm during the day and took evening classes at a private college nearby. I told no one. For 2 years, I worked tirelessly, saving every naira, studying late into the night. My mother watched silently, never interfering, but I could tell she was proud. Then one day, everything shifted again. Mr. Ojo suffered a mild stroke and had to be hospitalized for weeks. During that time, the family business was in crisis. His sons, who had always acted like princes, had no clue how to run the company. Drivers weren't paid, clients pulled out, and contracts were delayed. That was when I saw the opportunity. You see, while working at the law firm, I had quietly taken an interest in corporate documentation. I understood how business shares worked, how power of attorney could be transferred, and, most importantly, how carelessness with paperwork could cost someone everything. And Mr. Ojo was careless. He had once asked me to type and submit documents for his logistics firm, documents he never read properly. Back then, I had made extra copies. I knew where the original company files were kept, in a brown cabinet in his study, always unlocked, because only fools lock their own house from themselves. I wasn't planning to hurt him. But when you're treated like a stranger in your own home for years, when every smile hides a slap, something inside you changes. I drafted a temporary power of attorney, transferring key operational decisions to myself until the owner recovers. I forged his signature, knowing it would only work because everyone at the company knew me as Ojo's stepdaughter who sometimes helped with errands. I also made sure the document had a clause that allowed me to make emergency sales to protect the business. And then, I did it. I contacted one of our largest clients, a trucking firm looking to buy smaller competitors. I told them the company was in debt, which it was, and we needed to sell off the fleet. 10 trucks, sold overnight. They paid in full. 52 million Nigerian nairas. When the funds hit the company's account, I quietly transferred 10 million Nigerian nairas to an account I had created in my mother's name. Another 5 million Nigerian nairas went to my school fees and a small plot of land I purchased under an alias. The rest? I left it there, untouched. I returned the original documents to the cabinet, erased the fake files from the computer, and quit the company 2 days later, claiming stress. 2 weeks later, Mr. Ojo returned home. It didn't take long before chaos erupted. I was in my room when I heard him shouting. Papers were flying in the air, Kelechi was punching the wall, and Desmond looked like he'd seen a ghost. The trucks were gone. The money? Vanished. The contracts? Terminated. My stepfather screamed about betrayal, theft, curses. He called the police, but without evidence of fraud or missing records, there was nothing they could do. That evening, my mother knocked on my door, tears in her eyes, holding the bank slip I had left in her drawer. "Amara," she whispered, "what did you do?" I didn't answer. I simply hugged her for the first time in years and whispered, "We're free now, Mama." But freedom always comes at a cost, and the past doesn't stay buried for long. The following week felt like walking on a minefield. The house, once full of smug laughter and clinking glasses, now echoed with suspicion and rage. Mr. Ojo paced the compound like a lion searching for prey. His sons, once arrogant and loud, now whispered behind locked doors. They hired 2 different private investigators. Our phones were checked. The house help was dismissed. CCTV footage was reviewed. But they found nothing. You see, I had been careful. The client who bought the trucks thought everything was legal, they even had signed receipts. I had used a burner phone for all communications, and the documents were clean, just detailed enough to avoid suspicion. Still, I knew I couldn't stay there forever. Late one night, as I was packing my school books, my mother came into my room. She didn't say a word at first, just sat on the bed and stared at the floor. Then she asked the question I had been dreading. "Was it you, Amara?" I turned to her, trying to read her expression. Was it fear? Disappointment? Anger? "I did what you couldn't do, Mama," I said softly. "I made sure we were no longer hostages in our own home." She said nothing. Just nodded slowly, stood up, and left the room. That was the last real conversation we had before I moved out. I rented a modest 1-bedroom flat near my campus. Nothing fancy. Just peace and privacy. I enrolled full-time and began my 2nd year of accounting without distractions. Occasionally, I would send money to my mother in small amounts, anonymously. She never asked questions. But the past has claws. One day, while walking out of my lecture hall, I saw a black SUV parked near the gate. I didn't think much of it until I reached my hostel and found the front door open. My landlord was there, along with 2 police officers. Apparently, someone had tipped them off about stolen company assets. They asked me to come to the station for questioning. Inside that dimly lit room, Mr. Ojo was waiting, his eyes bloodshot, lips tight. "You thought you were smart, didn't you?" he spat. I remained calm. "Do you have proof I did anything wrong?" He slammed a document on the table. The sale agreements. I finally traced the paper trail. The signature matches mine, but I didn't sign this. The officer raised an eyebrow. Then it's a forgery case, sir. Do you have handwriting analysis? Mr. Ojo blinked. They didn't. Because they didn't want to report it as forgery. If they did, they'd have to admit to the tax authorities and their board that the business was mismanaged under his nose. That his own daughter outsmarted him. It wasn't just about money anymore, it was about ego. He leaned in and hissed, "Return the funds, and I won't press charges." I met his eyes and smiled. "I don't have your money, Mr. Ojo. And legally, I'm not your daughter. Remember?" That was the moment I realized something. He didn't want justice. He wanted control. And the fact that I had taken it from him, without lifting a fist, was eating him alive. Later that night, I received a message from Kelechi. "You're lucky you're a girl. If not, I'd have dealt with you already. Just wait. You think this is over?" I deleted the message and blocked the number. But I didn't sleep. Was I wrong? Had I gone too far? Had I become like them, cruel, calculating, heartless? I reached out to Zainab the next day. We met at a small cafe, and I told her everything. She listened quietly, then took my hand. "Amara, you didn't steal. You survived. You didn't take what wasn't yours, you took back what they tried to bury. Your stepfather built that business with your mother's silence and suffering. What you did was bold, but not evil. Still, guilt doesn't fade so easily." That evening, I went to see my mother. She was sitting on the veranda, peeling oranges in the same quiet way she had when I was 10. She didn't scold me. Didn't cry. She just said, "People think money is legacy. But the real legacy is the silence we leave behind. You broke that. I don't know whether to thank you or fear what you've become." I said nothing. Because I wasn't sure either. 3 months passed. Life had begun to settle into a strange kind of normalcy. I attended my lectures, paid my bills, and built a routine I could call mine. But deep down, I knew the silence wouldn't last. And I was right. One Wednesday evening, I received a message from an unknown number. "Your mother collapsed. General Hospital. Come now." I didn't wait. I grabbed my bag and ran. When I arrived, I found her on a hospital bed, frail and unconscious. "High blood pressure," the nurse said. "Likely caused by stress." Mr. Ojo was pacing near the doorway, his sons seated nearby like vultures waiting for bad news to strike gold. They didn't speak to me. I didn't speak to them. The nurse told us she'd be fine, but she needed rest, and she couldn't return to the same toxic environment. I knew immediately what I had to do. The next morning, I paid off a full year's rent for a quiet apartment in a different neighborhood. I moved her there without a word to anyone. She didn't protest. When I handed her the keys, she only asked, "What now?" "We live," I said. "For once, we live." But I still had one last thing to settle. I asked to meet Mr. Ojo at a restaurant. Public, neutral ground. He came, his face gaunt and aged. The once proud man who roared orders now looked tired, defeated. "What do you want?" he asked. "I came to talk. That's all." He scoffed. "You ruined me. You stole from me." "No," I said calmly. "I protected what should have been shared. My mother gave you 10 years of her life. She cooked, cleaned, covered your shame, and raised your sons like they were her own. And you treated her like a maid, like a beggar." He was silent. I leaned forward. "You said only your kids deserved your money. You made it clear I was nothing. So I acted like I had nothing to lose." His jaw tightened. "You think you're better than me now?" No, I replied. I just know what I'm worth now. And I won't let anyone, not even you, decide that for me again. He looked away. Then, surprisingly, he sighed. You think you've won, Amara. But life has a way of humbling everyone. You'll see. Maybe, I said, standing up. But when it does, I'll face it with dignity. Something you lost a long time ago. 2 years later, I graduated top of my class. I started a small accounting firm with Zainab, helping small business owners, mostly women, learn how to manage finances, read contracts, and protect themselves from exploitation. I didn't want anyone else to feel as helpless as my mother once did. One day, I received a call from Desmond. I know you don't owe us anything, he began, but Dad's sick. Liver failure. He's asking to see you. I didn't want to go. But some things must be faced, not avoided. At the hospital, he looked like a shadow of himself. Tubes. Machines. A man wrapped in regrets. I was wrong, he whispered. About everything. Your mother. You. I thought blood made family. But sometimes, love does more. I swallowed hard. He handed me a brown envelope. Company is gone. Sons can't run it. If anyone should rebuild it, it's you. I didn't take the envelope. Instead, I reached for his hand. You built it without kindness. I'll build mine with purpose. Tears filled his eyes. That was the last time I saw him. The money wasn't the victory. Power wasn't the revenge. Freedom was. This story isn't about teaching a wicked man a lesson. It's about reclaiming space where you were once made invisible. It's about knowing your worth when the world tries to convince you you have none. Sometimes, standing up for yourself doesn't mean shouting. It means being strategic. Quiet. Wise. Patient. My stepfather taught me many things, but the greatest lesson came not from his wealth, but from his cruelty. That silence is not peace. And obedience is not love. And sometimes, the most powerful thing a woman can do is stop waiting to be chosen and choose herself.